Okay, yeah.
Good morning.
If you want the hearing date for
You're breaking up, Martin, pretty hard.
oh, sorry. I was going to say, if you want the hearing dates for February and March, there's the 3rd and the 17th for both months.
Thank you, Martin.
And I think we forgot to ask if we had stat decks, eh?
I think that I'll ask that in the opening remarks, and I think we probably have to give the oath to everyone. So we're live, hey guys. So you know we're live on YouTube.
A little concerned about our March meeting on the 17th. That's St. Patty's Day.
It's a good thing it's in the morning. So we've got 1 minute to go, guys. Everybody ready?
Yes. I think we need Jocelyn still.
Nope, she's here.
Okay.
There she is. Okay, it being 9 o'clock, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Good morning and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Ottawa under the Planning Act. This video conference is also live streaming on YouTube. With me are my fellow panel members, Jocelyn Chandler, Stephen Lewis, Terrence Otto, and Martin Vervoort. My name is Fabian Poulin and I will be chairing this hearing. The procedure of this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with the agenda items in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear oral submissions from any interested parties. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. Can the coordinator confirm if we have received all the statutory declarations?
Mr. Chair, we have not received any statutory declarations.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The committee may ask for a brief presentation of the application followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the discretion of the chair. And before we begin, we have 2 items of business to address. Does any member present need to declare any interest in any of the applications that are before us today or that are on the agenda of another committee panel?
No.
There are no declarations of interest. And I don't believe we have any minutes to adopt today. So we will proceed to hear the applications scheduled for this hearing. We'll deal firstly with any items that may be adjourned. Is there anyone present who wishes to request an adjournment of one of the applications scheduled for this hearing? I believe we have 3. I'll go in order of ones that I believe we have. Item number 3, which is having to do 561 Casabella Drive. Mr. Holtzman, are you here? Mr. Holtzman. Good morning. You're muted, sir.
There we go. There we go.
Perfect.
Good morning.
Good morning. You would like to adjourn your application today, sir?
Yes, we've discussed the matter with staff after, well, we pre-consulted with staff a number of months ago. After submitting our application, staff got to us fairly quickly. They indicated there may be some problems with the way the development has been proposed, and it's certainly recognized in the staff report. So we've already started the ball rolling for a formal resubmission, but as staff have indicated, they'd be more than happy to meet with us next week, and we're anxious to do that and work with staff to eliminate their concerns with the subdividing of this block of land into 8 individual parcels. So we have a game plan in mind. We hope to work with staff and come back and get on hopefully the first meeting in January.
Okay. Do you agree with that, Mr. Walker? You agree with the adjournment?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct. Staff has quite a bit of concerns with this application. And as such, we are requesting that the application to be adjourned so that staff can meet with the applicant to go over the issues and to find a path forward with the severances.
Okay, thank you. I believe the first meeting we have is January the 13th. Would that be suitable, Mr. Holtzman?
Yes, it would be, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. So I would like to ask the panel for a vote in favor of adjourning this application to January the 13th. All in favor? So you're adjourned to January 13th, Mr. Holtzman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good morning. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I'll now proceed on to application number 4, having to do with 7732 Snake Island Road. Is Mr. West here? You're muted, Mr. West. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
I understand you'd like to adjourn your application this morning?
Yes, that is correct. We've received the comments from municipal staff suggesting that a third severance be required to actually sever the western portion of the land, and we're in agreement. So we'd like to adjourn the meeting we'd like to adjourn this application to the first meeting in January, which I believe is the 13th, as you just stated.
Yeah, I think it is. How are we doing, Mr. Coordinator? Are we good to go with another application on January 13th? Or have we got a full list?
Mr. Chair, thank you. We'd still be accepting applications for January 13th at this point.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, do you agree with this application being adjourned today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct. Staff has had a conversation with the applicant and they have agreed to submit the additional application as required.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of the deferral of this application to January the 13th. All in favor? Your application is deferred. Mr. West, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we will proceed to application number 5. That application is being requested to be adjourned as well. And I'd like to ask Mr. Robinson, are you available?
I am.
Perfect. And I understand you'd like to have your application adjourned as well, sir?
Yes, there are 2 applications adjacent to one another that are being heard this morning. The address of 7680 Soldiers Line, we would like that one to proceed, and the application at 7690 Soldiers Line. Through recent discussions with Mr. Walker, it was identified that we need a minor variance on one of the 3 eventual lots at 7690 Soldiers Line, and that is due to some minimum distance separation calculations to a small barn to the west. We have done those calculations now, and a variance has been identified. I have filed the variance application. I believe it should have been in the at the committee offices on Monday, 2 days ago. So we would like the application for the severance and the minor variance for 7690 heard at the same time and at the first available committee hearing.
That first available committee hearing is January 13th.
So December 9th is not available.
We've got a pretty full agenda that day.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Let me ask Mr. Walker, do you agree with this request for adjournment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct. Staff has been in contact with the applicant, and we have reviewed the MDS information. And once the applicant applied for the required variances, that would solve the issue that staff has with the application.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. I'd like to ask the panel to, if they approve of this application being deferred until or adjourned until January the 13th. All in favor?
Question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Would it not make sense to hear the whole thing at once instead of dealing with the two separate times?
I'll leave that to Mr. Robinson to describe. He's asking for the adjournment on number 5. Mr. Robinson?
We would prefer we're here today. We'd like to have the application for 7680 heard today, and it does not have any MDS issues for that.
Mr. Lewis, does that satisfy you?
Suits me, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me,
Again, I'd
Mr.
like-
Chair.
Yes?
Sorry, we did have a last minute speaker. We just received a Mr. Metcalf, so I don't know.
And
wanted
it
to hear from
pertains
him
to
for
which
this.
one of the applications?
I believe to both applications.
To both applications. We're adjourning this one so he can address, I guess, his comments to item number 6 when we get to number 6, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the panel to adjourn this application to January the 13th. All in favor? Your application's adjourned, Mr. Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we had a late request for adjournment from an applicant on application number 1. And that would be from Tracy Zander. Is Ms. Zander in the room? Ms. Zander? Or Mr. Thurston?
Hello, Mr. Thurston here. Yes, if possible, we'd like to adjourn to the next available time for the committee.
Okay.
We are working with the city. There were some concerns surrounding the zone being in agriculture, and I suppose the city has some policies surrounding that are preventing them from supporting severance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thurston. You okay with January the 13th?
If at all possible, the city has mentioned they will work with us by the end of the week. If there's any appetite or possibility of seeing us a little bit before that, we were hoping to have building permits submitted by the end of the year in hopes to have a spring build for the personal dwelling that we're proposing. Right
now, Mr. Thurston, we have a complete agenda for the only meeting in December. So regretfully, January 13th is the first opportunity for you.
Okay, I guess there's nothing we can do.
Okay, Mr. Walker, you have any comments on this adjournment request?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted in staff's report, staff is in objection to the application as proposed today, but we have also noted that there is an opportunity for the applicant to modify their plan that would comply with the policies of the official plan. And we will meet with the applicant to go over those possibilities. And so an adjournment would be appropriate in this instance.
Okay, thank you very much. Panel, I'd like to ask you for a vote to adjourn this application to January 13th. All in favor? Thank you. Your application's been adjourned till January the 13th. Thank you, Mr. Thurston. Now proceed on to application number 2. Application number 2 is having to do with 5123 Hawthorne Road and 3748 Rito Road. Is Mr. Chatter here? Good morning, Mr. Chatter.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
I have to administer an oath to you, considering that you
Yes.
have not received your statutory declaration with respect to the sign posting. Are you able to take that oath today?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can.
can you please proceed and briefly describe your application for the panel?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. I believe the coordinator would give a short presentation for you. We can go to the second slide, please. These lands are a part of the industrial park known as the Hawthorne Industrial Park, owned by the Tomlinson Development Corporation. It is in the southern part of the city, east of Bank Street, just east of Hawthorne Road, and immediately south of Rideau Road. The area in blue shown on this schedule demonstrates the entirety of the parcels we're dealing with, both Block 5 and the large triangle which forms Phase 2 of the subdivision. So we've made two separate applications for you today. One is to create a consent on Block 5 to create approximately a 9.25 acre parcel. And the second application is then to add approximately an acre of land from the Phase 2 lands to this newly created parcel as a lot line adjustment to thus create about a 10-acre parcel for a logistics facility. If you go to the next slide for me. This is the outline of Block 5, which is part of the subdivision plan, which is approved by the city. The retained land is shown in the green. The red is the part 1, which we will create as a result of our first application. It has frontage on Somme Street, and it also has technical frontage on Rideau Road. The subdivision agreement has provisions in it for 1-foot reserve along Rideau Road for no access. It also has a 1-foot reserve along Somme Street to deal with the requirement to prove water quality prior to the issuance of a site plan approval. We are intending that all of those conditions from the subdivision agreement will be continued after the consent application so that all of those issues will be dealt with. The second, that creates a parcel that's just over 9 acres. The agreement of purchase and sale required a 10-acre parcel. Thus, once this parcel gets created, we're needing to add some additional land. If you go to the next slide for me. That next is that small red portion in the northeast corner of the large triangle, which will be added to the newly created lot to give us a 10-acre total. This spoke with Mr. Walker, and we're in agreement with, we will provide the city with the road widening across that part of the parcel. In accordance with the subdivision approach, we've given the proper widening for the arterial road. And we're also suggesting that we include the 1-foot reserve at this time on that parcel to prohibit access to Rideau Road. That'll be consistent with the subdivision agreement. If you could flip to, I think there's one more slide. Mr. Chairman, we've gone through our normal process. It's consistent with the PPS. It conforms to the official plan. This is an industrial park employment area in the city's plan, and the lot size we are creating meets all the minimum requirements of the city's zoning bylaw. Happy to answer any questions if the committee has any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chatter. Mr. Walker, can you comment on behalf of the city?
Mr. Chair, the department has reviewed the proposal and has no concerns. The proposed lot line adjustment and severance represents controlled development for the area. The department would typically request that certain conditions be applied to severance applications, but in this instance, given that there is currently a subdivision agreement for these lands, those are conditions have already been imposed on the property. So, and as such, staff are requesting that they not be imposed at this time. There are a few conditions which Mr. Chatter had mentioned that staff have imposed, and I would be happy to answer any questions about those if there are any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. I'd like to now ask the panel for any questions or comments. Mr. Vervoort?
Just a couple. Do parts 8 and 9 figure into this? We just had a note that there's a possible amendment required for the 261 application. Or are we fine with that? I think part 9 is the road widening and part 8 is the 1-foot reserve. But I'm just wondering if the application shouldn't include that part of part 8, which is associated with part 7. I just want to make sure that we have the right parts.
Yes,
Chatter?
yes, our intention was that part 8 on that draft reference plan be conveyed to the city as the 1 foot reserve.
Okay.
And that part 9 be conveyed to the city as a road widening.
So is part 8 actually being conserved? Is part 8 actually being conveyed to the city, or is it's just a 1 foot reserve, which will go back to you eventually, right?
In this case, no, Mr. Chair, because it's actually a 1 foot reserve to prohibit access. So it'll be retained. It'll be retained by the city.
Okay, so that's fine. So I think we're good with part 7 then, eh? Just with part 7? Okay, I just had another question for Mr. Walker with respect to the first condition. I'm not sure why we would impose a condition that the owner acknowledges the existing registered subdivision agreement if that's already registered on title. Anybody purchasing the property would see that anyway when they did their normal title search. So I'm just wondering why that condition's in there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the department included that condition out of an abundance of caution to ensure that all future owners of the site are aware of the conditions within the subdivision agreement and that they receive relevant copies of those agreements.
Mr. Revort?
Well, it seems like a redundant exercise. I'm not sure that I would be in favor of imposing that condition if it's already registered on title. Those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay. Mr. Lewis, any questions, comments, or concerns?
No comments or concerns.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler? You're muted.
Wrong screen. I understand about the abundance of caution, but it just ends up being 2 notices on the registration, like the subdivision one and then the one that's being requested. I tend to agree with Mr. Herbert that it's redundant and it just adds more paperwork into the registry system, which is enough to wade through as it is. So I would be okay with removing that condition. Interested to hear what Mr. Chatter has to say about it.
Mr. Chatter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, we would agree it seems to be the old-fashioned belt and suspenders approach, and it will be a duplication of it. I had a quick conversation with our solicitor last night, and he said he would mirror your comment that it is just going to be an extra layer on title, which doesn't necessarily need to be there. He said he didn't really care. It's just going to be more paperwork, and it will be a duplication. I wasn't about to object to the condition, Mr. Chair, just to make sure we got the application approved.
Okay, thank you. I'm in agreement with Mr. Vervoort and Ms. Chandler. Nobody wants extra paperwork. I'd be in favor of removing condition number 1. To that end, have you reviewed the other 3 conditions? Road widening, the reserve, and the lot line adjustment. Are you satisfied with those?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I've reviewed them and we're satisfied with those conditions.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to make an amendment to the application by removing condition number 1. To that end, I'd like to ask the panel for a vote to approve this application without condition number 1. All in favor? Sorry.
Chair, I'm not sure we heard from Mr. Lewis. I can't remember if
We did. I thought we did.
About that. My apologies.
No worries. So again, all in favor of approving this application minus the agreement to put condition number 1 on. All in favor of that application? So your application is approved, Mr. Chatter, without condition number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your attention to this matter.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks. Now we'll move on to item number 6. And this is an application having to do with 7680 Soldiers Line. And Mr. Robinson, are you available? Mr. Robinson.
I'm here.
Great, didn't see you. Thank you very much. Are you available to take the oath pertaining to the declaration that you had to sign on the property?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do swear that to be true.
Thank you very much. Would you please proceed and give us a brief description of your application today?
Okay. So the application before you today is at 7680 Soldiers Line. It is a parcel of land that is approximately 21 hectares of land. It's on the south side of Soldiers Line, east of Munster Road. It's shown in both in the green outline on the drawing on the left-hand portion of the screen. The intent is to sever off 2 new lots from that parcel, and they would be along Soldiers Line. They'd be approximately 50 meters wide and between 134 and 176 meters deep. There would be one retained lot, which would have its frontage of 50 meters along the west side of the overall property. The zoning, which is an RU zoning, requires a frontage of 50 meters and an overall lot area of 0.8 hectares, which is 2 acres. The lots in question that are proposed to be created meet those requirements. As you can see potentially on the right-hand side of the sketch, this is the drawing that shows the most easterly lot to be severed. There's another sketch with the westerly lot to be severed as well. But this lot has its rear lot line abutting an existing hydro easement. So that lot is shaped so that none of its lands are beneath the hydro easement. Could we go to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So this is an aerial view of the area, the property in question at 7680 Soldiers Line. You can see just beneath the number 7680 is the hydro lines that exist. To the left of 7680 Soldiers Line is 7690 Soldiers Line, which is owned by Mr. and Mrs. Jagachandran. This property at 7680 is just owned by Mr. Jagachandran. As you heard earlier, we're asking for we're going to have 7690 file heard in January. Across the road from 7680 Soldiers Line, there are some single family homes. In total, I believe right now there are 11 homes on Soldiers Line. And the intent with this application is that there would be 2 new lots created. We do have just off the aerial photo, approximately 350 meters to the southeast of this property. There are 2 barns. We have done the MDS calculations for those. Based on the size of those barns, they only require a separation distance of 181 meters. As indicated in the staff report that Mr. Walker has filed with the committee, city staff have no objections to these applications. They meet the zoning requirements in terms of lot areas, lot widths. It meets the official plan designation for this area. Other key comments from a technical standpoint that have come in are from the RBCA. They have no objections to these severances being approved. And I'm here to answer any questions that committee members may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. I now ask Mr. Walker to make some comments on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department has reviewed the application and has no concerns with it. Staff is satisfied that the proposal represents control and orderly development for the area, and as it complies with the policies of the official plan. And both new lots, as well as the retained lot will all be complying with the provisions of the zoning bylaw.
Thank you very much. I believe we have a member of the public that would like to make some comments. Mr. Metcalf. You're muted, sir.
Hello, good morning. I own the property that's on the north side of Soldier's Line that pretty much lines across from the parcels. We have 2 applications that we received notification on, that it was a total of 6 lot severances that they were requesting. I know that we're currently talking about the 3, which are 7680. It appears to us that, you know, the property has been purchased for a quick turnaround. Like, do any of the applicants propose to be building on any of these lots, or are these just going to be sold and then 6 additional houses being added to our quiet country road?
Mr. Robinson?
Mr. Jagatrandran is intending to have these properties severed, and they'll be independently separate lots, and he is potentially going to be building them himself and selling them. Right now, it's unknown as to who will be the purchaser, the eventual purchasers. But Mr. Jagatrandran would like to continue forward and get these lots approved for development.
So in essence, they're basically building a subdivision across from our homes.
I think, Mr. Metcalf, I don't think these are independent questions. I think we have to just deal with the issue we're dealing with today, which is addressing the variance requested by the applicant. And so if you could address your comments to that application and with respect to the conditions, not the conditions, but the 4 tests, that would be appropriate.
Well, in order to get back here, we have to cross a single pass bridge, and we are on dirt roads. So there's going to be a lot of additional traffic to build 6 new homes potentially across the road from us. We've had our road washout a few years ago, which you can check. It's part of public record. The Munster Side Road washed out. We were all trapped back here. So my concern is that I own 2 homes that are right across the road from this. And, you know, we have farmland, we have horses, the Browns have horses, and is there going to be disruption to our neighborhood? Like, you know, we built back here because it's a quiet country, dead end road. And my family's owned the property since the 40s. And now suddenly none of the other neighbors have had difficulties getting lots that are 300 foot wide, which used to be the frontage. And now it's 166.6666 feet is acceptable. So if you look down our road, there's no other houses, I believe, that have that small of frontage. And now we're going to have 6 houses that are basically going to be, for our point of view, since we have large parcels of land, most of us, or at least 300 foot frontage, they're going to be stacked right beside one another.
Okay. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions, comments, or concerns. Mr. Otto? You're muted.
Yes, I have a question in regards to the triangular shaped lot. They said it was shaped that way so it wouldn't have anything under the hydro line, but in the picture, the aerial photograph, it looked like most of it is under the hydro line or the hydro corridor. Could you clarify that for me, please?
Mr. Robinson?
What I was referring to is that the newly created lot on the east side has been located so that none of it is beneath the hydro line. The retained lot, which has its road frontage on the west side of the overall property, will be behind that most easterly of the newly created lots. So a newly created lot will not have any of its land beneath the hydro easement. If you could go back to the aerial photo or actually the surveyor sketch, that may help.
Madam Coordinator. Madam Coordinator, are you able to find that present? There we go.
So the lot that is in the rose-colored or peach-colored outline, where it has 51.5 meters of frontage on the south side of the Soldiers line, and then its rear lot line is at a bit of an angle, and that rear lot line length is 67.9 meters, and and that coincides with the edge of the hydro line easement. The property to the west, the proposed new lot to the west, which is shown as in a dashed outline, none of that will be beneath the hydro easement. And then the larger retained parcel, which has the remainder of the frontage on Soldiers line, then is behind the other two lots to be created. And that will be beneath the hydro line easement, but a newly created lot will not be beneath the hydro line easement. In terms of what Mr. Metcalf had to say about, I guess, the construction of these new homes, this property will have 2 new lots created, and the other property that will be before the committee in January will also have 2 new lots created or proposed to be created, and there is an existing house on that property. So if there was to be a house on each of the newly created lots that is before you today, and if a new house was also to be created on the retained lot that is before you today, the maximum number of new houses would be 5. Right now, the street, I believe, the road has, I believe, 11 houses on it. So it would be a total of 16 houses on this road. In terms of traffic, I don't believe that the increase of 5 potential new homes across 2 properties is going to create much in the way of traffic issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Anything further, Mr. Otto? You're muted. There you
Yeah,
go.
I know. I keep slipping back and forth. Anyways, no, if you could go to the aerial photograph, that's where I had my concerns, because the one outlined in red, which I thought was the severed or one of the severances, is mainly under that hydro corridor easement, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Thank you. The area in red, that's an extract from the zoning bylaw. That's maybe where the mistake is, and that property, I gather, is in a separate zoning category of 01P, and then the lot lines, the existing lot lines are in yellow. So the existing property, if you zoom out a bit, please. It says 7680 Soldiers line, and then there's a black line that's into the middle of the lot. So where the number 7680 are is where the hydro line you can see going from top to bottom at a bit of an angle across that aerial photo.
Yeah.
And the new lots are to the left of that and closer to the road.
Anything further, Mr. Otto?
No, thank you very much.
Mr. Lewis, any questions, comments, or concerns?
A couple of comments. I certainly understand Mr. Metcalf's concerns and the other neighbors who aren't really turned on by these applications. However, it does meet all the conditions and rules and the zoning bylaws that we follow. And you know, I guess I really don't have any reason not to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Chandler, any questions, comments, or concerns?
I just wondered if Mr. Walker could speak briefly to the access issue to these roads, if they'd heard anything back from emergency services or, you know, public, like road maintenance.
Mr. Walker?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the application was circulated to our transportation team, and we have not received any comments back from them, or any concerns back from them, rather, with the proposal.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other comments.
Thanks, Ms. Chandler. Mr. Vervoort, any questions, comments, or concerns?
I understand the Mr. Metcalf's and the neighbors' concerns, but I agree with all the comments. that Mr. Lewis made.
Thank you, Mr. Revort. Mr. Robinson, are you aware of the conditions that are imposed on your application?
Yes, I am.
Do you agree with them?
Well, there's one that I think I don't agree with, and many other people who present to the committee don't agree with, and I believe the committee don't agree with it either, but then the city legal department often override that, and that's related to the provision of a road widening across the retained and the to be severed parcels. The surveyor believes that there may not be a need to have any road widenings, but that would be determined during the final surveying. But we don't agree with having to provide a road widening across the to be retained parcel, but we would live with it if absolutely necessary. I'm aware of the other conditions related to cash in lieu of parkland being required. Also, there's requirements to do with well and septic, and I'm aware of those, and those are fine.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, can you explain why you want to take the road widening across the retained at a dead-end street where there only happens to be 11 existing homes?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as staff has mentioned to the committee on numerous occasions, and as our legal counsel have provided the committee with written explanation of this and verbal at a committee meeting, this is required as per the provincial policy statement and the official plan and the city's official plan. Yes, the street might be a dead end today, but there might be plans to widen the road at some point in the future, and as such, this the city needs that road widening taken.
I don't have any further questions or comments about that specific item. Mr. Robinson, in advance, Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, it's I understand. I've had this discussion with Mr. Walker, but to me, the likelihood of this road ever being extended is very low, because where it ends right now is into quite a large forested area. It just ends in a dead end. It's a gravel road. The road that it comes off is a gravel road at that portion. I think the likelihood that this would ever be widened is very low, but if necessary, we will agree with it.
I'd like to let Mr. Metcalf have an opportunity to say something. Mr. Metcalf?
Hello. Again, it's just that in order to get back here, you have to cross a single pass bridge. Two vehicles cannot pass one another. And honestly, I don't know if it's going to support all the construction equipment that's going to come over here on an ongoing basis to build 6 houses, then the services. And then you're going to have, there's the one house that they were talking about that is currently built there. There was an addition that was abandoned. And that house, I'm not sure of the condition of that house, but there was a large addition that was going to double the size of the house, and it was abandoned. I don't know if there was a stop work order or whatnot. And honestly, I just feel that putting 6 potential houses, if that one gets taken down and rebuilt, these houses only having 50 meter frontage, it's just going to look, if you look down our road, come down here, drive down here, see our dirt roads, see our single pass bridge, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But just without seeing it, it's difficult to show you what exactly I'm talking about here.
Okay,
we have
thank you,
large
Mr.
lots.
Metcalf.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lewis, you wanted to make a comment?
Well, this back at the time, talking about the road widening on the retained land. A lot of people have a hell of a lot more than 50 meters of retained land that they're paying the road widening on. You got 100 meters and you're complaining about another 50. Like, I guess my thoughts are quit when you're ahead. Thank you.
Ms. Chandler, you had your own, you wanted to say something?
It was just with regard to the road widening too. I sort of was thinking the same thing as Mr. Lewis, although my sort of angle was different. This isn't a big piece of agricultural land. This is basically a development. It doesn't even sound like the owner's going to live there. I have no issue with road widening on any land that's just being treated as development land in the same way a subdivision would be. Those are the rules that come with the game.
Okay. Mr. Otto, do you have any comments on the road widening?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rivard?
No, I don't think in this case the road widening requested is onerous or unreasonable, so I would support the road widening on the retained lands in this case as well.
Thank you very much. So given there are no further comments, I would like to ask the panel for approval of this application with all 4 conditions intact. All in favor, please raise your hand. Your application is approved. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We will now move on to application number 7. Application number 7 is having to do with 42 Oxalis Crescent. Mario Poulain, are you here?
I am.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Mr. Chair?
Very good, thank you. Mr. Poulain, I'd like you to ask you if you're prepared to take an oath having to do with the statutory requirement of having the sign posting on your property.
I am.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time. Do you swear?
I affirm.
Thank you very much. Would you please give us a brief description of your application?
Yes. So the proposal today is to get a rear yard setback or to diminish the rear yard setback from what the zoning bylaw is to a smaller setback, which then triggers the lot area percentage from 25% to a little bit smaller. The shape of the lot is I think the most interesting part of this, and it's only because as you look at the lot, the side yard is actually the bigger portion of all of the amenity portion left. Even if we were to have anything in the side yard, the rear yard is still the smaller of those two. So what we're proposing to do is have a sunroom off the back of the house, projected out with some glass on both sides, and on the rear, smaller portion of glass to be able to conform to the building code bylaws and the spatial separations, and to be able to maintain for him and his family, for the clients and their family, a big enough portion of amenity yard that they can use.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Walker, do you have any comments on behalf of the city?
Mr. Chair, yes, so the department has reviewed the proposal and has some concerns with it. While staff agrees that there is enough yard left for the owners of the property to have amenity space, the proposed reduction in rear yard setback is out of character with the surrounding neighborhood and may result in a loss of privacy to the abutting property.
Thank you. I believe we have 2 members of the public that would like to make a presentation. Mr. Kanjum Mu. Is Mr. Mu there? Good morning, Mr. Mu. You're muted right now.
Good morning.
There you go. Good morning.
Yeah, I'm one of backyard neighbor of Mr. Ryan. So I have a similar concern as the previous the idea. So because this one is, I think, is really not good to protect the neighbors' privacy and view, and also give some trouble to maintain the public facility like a fence. And also there's a drainage in the Mr. Ryan's yard. So that one will have some concern to maintain the later on. And also I have another concern is because if this proposal was approved, somebody in this community anybody can do the same thing. So that will make a lot of public concern for this community. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Young, would you like to make some comments?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh yeah, so I'm the owner. Yeah, so the backyard neighbor in this case, I'm the backyard neighbor directly south of 42 Oxalis Crescent. So here I'm strongly against this proposal. Firstly, personally, I have no problem building a sunroom if the distance is far enough. However, in this case, our rear yard setback is already very short. The reason that why the zoning bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 6 meters, which allows adequate privacy. Now, in this case, the distance between our rear walls is about 13 meters. My rear wall to the fence is about 6 meters. My neighbor is about 7 meters. If my backyard neighbor build this sunroom, our rear walls between us will be only around 8 meters. So according to the design drawings on page 3, the rear view of this sunroom, there will be built 2 5 feet by 5 feet glass windows directly face my property. Probably he changed this plan to the solid wall with the windows. So I just follow the chart, the drawings. So the height of our fence is only 8 feet. There's 2 windows will be higher than the top of the fence, so by at least 1 meter. And the rear wall of this sunroom is only 2.16 meters from the fence. It impacts my outside activities. Imagine that just 8 meters away from my house, I will see a wall with 2 glass windows. This views change really bothers me and makes me feel uncomfortable with the lack of privacy. So I think this sunroom can increase my backyard neighbor's property value, but this additional sunroom would affect my property value. Secondly, according to the design drawings, there's 3 sides with glass windows. It will bring the possible light pollution to those neighbors around because of a crowded neighborhood. Finally, I think that's overdevelopment of site in this neighborhood will be setting a precedent for others in the area, would also have an adverse effect of this residential amenity of this neighborhood. For example, if this sunroom is get approved, I have to think out a way to build something or structure to protect my privacy. That's why existing bylaws should be followed and as they presently exist. So I hope the committee members will look at my objections seriously, such as lack of privacy, influences of views and the sunlight, possible light pollution and the overshadowing. Also hope the committee members could put more weight on the feedbacks from the neighbors directly affected by this sunroom. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Poulain, do you have anything to say?
Yes. So as of the comments that came in from the city on Friday, I know that the character was one of the things that was challenged or that was brought up. And to that regards, I think it's difficult to say because the development is only from 2018. Like this house was built 2 years ago. So the character hasn't, in my opinion, hasn't yet been developed in the sense that the houses are of the same shape and the same form. Some of them have bump outs at the back with fireplaces and some of them don't. In that same regards, they're not all the same height. Some of the grades are much higher and some of the grades are much lower. So in this case, when I look at our property, we're one of the lower houses. So when you look to the house on the right, which would be, I think, 38 oxalis or 40 oxalis, I have a picture from the backyard. His deck off of his door, even though it's just a 4-foot deck, is about 3 feet higher than the 8-foot fence between us. So I think that it's really difficult, and I completely understand. We've had 2 comments from neighbors coming in that were for it, and 2 comments that came in for neighbors that were against it. So I do understand the challenges. I think we've tried to do things to diminish some of the concerns in the sense of we went with a sunroom system that is only a 7-foot height at the front, and it's sloped off the house, so it's not a gable, to diminish some of the shadowing that's going to come off. So it doesn't impact more than what the house does because of where it's located. We also tried to have as much glass on both sides, which are the spaces where we have the most setback and the most distance from the neighbor, and have the least amount of glass on the back wall. So from the top of the window with the 8-foot fence, with the top of our window is about 10'3". So there would be about 2 feet of glass above the fence. Anybody standing at an 8-foot fence, you have to stand far enough back in order to get that angle to look up. So I do understand. If we're talking about it from a grade perspective, then I think we tried to diminish as much as we could to allow our client to get some space for him and his family, and to not impact the neighbors as much as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Poulin. I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions or comments. Mr. Vervoort, any questions, comments, or concerns?
Just a question for Mr. Poulin. Why is it not possible to put the sunroom addition on the side of the house where there's a lot more space?
Yeah, so the back corner side is the kitchen wall. So there's venting on that side, and the clients would have to go and demolish the whole kitchen in order to have the access and the entry off of that. Whereas off the back, there's already a window off of the kitchen. So it was the most effective way to make it without trying to demolish a good portion of a house that was built 2 years ago.
Thank you.
Ms. Chandler, any questions, comments, or concerns?
I appreciate the situation that the homeowner finds themselves in. Unfortunately, the inconvenience of building off to the side and avoiding a minor variance aren't particularly persuasive to me, although I know it's a pain. But I have a number of problems with this, but I think the short answer is I do not see how this meets the 4 tests in terms of the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, which specifically speaks to the immediately spacing, privacy, density, light, and air afforded to both the homeowner and the neighbors. Specifically, a 2-meter setback from the adjacent, or whatever it is, specifically 2.13, is really limiting in terms of providing those to your neighboring properties to the rear. I understand that there were 2 neighbors who were in support, but they are certainly not the ones who are most significantly affected by this. I think in a new subdivision that there's a very reasonable expectation for people moving in there that 6-meter rear yard allowance will be held. That's what they bought. So unfortunately, I don't see how this meets the 4 tests for a variance, especially when there is an opportunity to build an extension somewhere that would be in conformity with the setbacks.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Mr. Lewis, any questions, comments, or concerns?
I tend to agree with Ms. Chandler. 6 to 2.13 may work in some places, but I don't see it being minor in nature in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Otto, any questions, comments, or concerns?
No, I'm much of the same opinion as the previous 2 speakers.
Thank you. So at this point, I'd like to ask for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed.
Sorry, Mr. Poulin. I'd be in favor of the application. I would just note that I think the applicant has done everything possible to try and minimize the impact, and I believe that it does meet the 4 tests, so I would approve the application.
Thank you very much, Mr. Revort. Again, Mr. Walker, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's correct. I just want to add one thing. Based on the package that was provided to us, it didn't appear as if there was a fence along the rear property line. But hearing from Mr. Young and Mr. Poulin today, it appears that there is a fence along the rear property line, and I'm just looking for confirmation from that from Mr. Poulin, if possible.
Yes, the fence has been built on all 3 sides.
Okay. Well, with this new information that there is a fence along the rear property line, I would add that address some of staff's concerns regarding the loss of privacy, as there is now a fence between both properties.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. I just go backwards now because with that new information, Mr. Vervoorten, I'd like to ask all the panel if they would approve this application with that new application. All in favor? Now I'd ask who's opposed to this application. All opposed? Thank you. Your application, Mr. Poulet, has been refused today.
Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. There being no further business, I'd like to call this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment adjourned. Thank you, everyone.